If you can translate this, I'll give you my salary. That's what the billionaire CEO mocked, but the janitor spoke 7 languages. You're about to witness an incredible story about hidden talents, cultural bridges, and how sometimes the person cleaning your office might be the smartest one in the building. If you're ready for this amazing journey of discovery and respect, smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss inspiring stories like this one. Trust me, what happens next will absolutely blow your mind. Let's dive in. The fluorescent lights hummed softly in the 52nd floor offices of Global Tech Industries as Maria Santos pushed her cleaning cart down the pristine marble hallway. At 4:30 a.m., the Chicago skyscraper was nearly empty, save for the occasional security guard and the dedicated cleaning crew that kept the corporate machine running smoothly. Maria had been cleaning these offices for 5 years, moving invisibly through the world of high-powered executives and million-dollar deals. At 42, she had weathered hands and tired eyes, but there was something about her posture, straight-backed and dignified, that spoke of inner strength. Her navy blue uniform was always impeccably clean, her graying hair pulled back in a neat bun, and she approached each task with quiet professionalism. The executive floor was her responsibility, and she took pride in maintaining the spotless environment that these important people expected. She knew their schedules, their preferences, even their personal quirks. Mr. Harrison in corner office A preferred his desk completely clear. Miss E. Williams in office C always left thank you notes for the cleaning staff. And CEO Richard Blackstone in the penthouse office, well, he barely acknowledged that cleaning staff existed at all. As Maria entered the conference room where Global Tech's leadership team would gather in just 4 hours, she couldn't help but notice the documents scattered across the mahogany table. International contracts, correspondence in multiple languages, and what appeared to be urgent communications from their overseas partners. The company had been struggling lately with their global expansion, particularly in markets where language barriers had proven more challenging than expected. She began her methodical cleaning routine, dusting the electronics, polishing the table, emptying trash bins, when a particular document caught her eye. It was a letter marked urgent with text in what appeared to be Mandarin Chinese. Next to it was a sticky note in Blackstone's aggressive handwriting. Need translation ASAP. Billion-dollar deal depends on this. Maria paused in her cleaning. The Chinese characters were as clear to her as English, perhaps clearer since Mandarin had been her first language, learned at her grandmother's knee in Taiwan before her family had immigrated to the United States when she was 12. The letter was from Wei Corporation, Global Tech's potential partner in the Asian market. But as Maria read, her expression grew increasingly concerned. This wasn't the enthusiastic partnership agreement that Global Tech's executives were expecting. It was a polite but firm rejection, citing concerns about cultural insensitivity in Global Tech's previous communications and questioning whether the American company truly understood the Asian market's needs. Maria set down her cleaning spray and read the letter again, making sure she understood correctly. The Wei Corporation was giving Global Tech one final chance. A meeting next week where they would need to demonstrate genuine cultural understanding and present their proposals in multiple Asian languages to show their commitment to respectful international business. She looked around the empty conference room, knowing that in a few hours Blackstone and his team would walk in completely unaware of what this letter actually contained. Their previous translator had quit the week before, citing Blackstone's impossible demands and disrespectful treatment. Without understanding the true contents of this communication, they would walk into next week's meeting completely unprepared. Maria's background was complicated in ways that none of her colleagues could imagine. Born in Taiwan to a diplomat's family, she had spent her childhood moving between countries, picking up languages like souvenirs, Mandarin, English, Spanish from their years in Mexico, French from a posting in Montreal, German from her university years in Berlin, Japanese from business school in Tokyo, and Arabic from her master's degree work in international relations at Cairo University. But life had a way of taking unexpected turns. Her husband's sudden death in a car accident had left her a single mother with 2 young children and massive medical debts. Her impressive academic credentials meant little when she needed immediate income to keep food on the table. Cleaning jobs paid cash, offered flexible hours for her children's schedules, and required no lengthy background checks that might delay her start date. What was supposed to be temporary work until she could rebuild had stretched into 5 years. Her children were now in high school and college respectively. Her debts were nearly paid off, but she had settled into the rhythm of invisible work. Until this moment, when her hidden expertise might actually matter. The executive elevator dinged softly, startling Maria from her thoughts. She glanced at the clock. 5:15 a.m. Someone was arriving unusually early. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway, and moments later, CEO Richard Blackstone burst into the conference room. At 55, he was an imposing figure, tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair and the kind of expensive suit that cost more than Maria made in 3 months. His face was already flushed with frustration, and he was barking orders into his Bluetooth headset. "I don't care what time it is in Tokyo," he was saying. "Get me someone who can read Chinese. This deal is falling apart, and I need to know what these people are actually saying." He noticed Maria for the first time, his gaze sliding over her dismissively before focusing on the documents spread across the table. Maria continued polishing the far end of the conference table, trying to remain invisible, as she had learned to do. Blackstone ended his call and slammed his phone down on the table. 5 years building this partnership, and now they send us documents in Chinese like we're supposed to magically understand what they're saying. Maria's hands stilled on the polishing cloth. She knew she should remain silent, continue her work, and let the corporate executives handle their own problems. But she also knew that the Way Corporation letter contained crucial information that could save or destroy this deal, and potentially hundreds of jobs at Global Tech. "Excuse me, sir," she said quietly, not looking up from her polishing. Blackstone glanced at her with obvious irritation. "What is it? I'm dealing with a crisis here." "The Chinese letter, sir. I couldn't help but notice." "You couldn't help but notice what?" His voice carried a sharp edge of annoyance. "Are you supposed to be reading confidential documents while you clean?" Maria felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she pressed on. "I understand Chinese, sir. The letter—" "It's not what you think it is." Blackstone stared at her for a long moment, then let out a harsh laugh that echoed off the conference room walls. "You understand Chinese? Right. And I suppose you also speak Japanese and French while you're at it." "Actually, yes, sir, and German, Spanish, and Arabic as well." The laughter died on Blackstone's lips. He looked at her more closely, taking in her serious expression and the confident way she held herself despite her humble uniform. "That's ridiculous," he said finally. "You're a janitor. You clean toilets and empty trash cans. Don't try to tell me you speak 7 languages." Maria met his gaze steadily. "I have master's degrees in international relations and linguistics, sir. I speak Mandarin, English, Spanish, French, German, Japanese, and Arabic fluently." Blackstone's expression shifted from amusement to something approaching curiosity, though skepticism still dominated his features. "Even if that were true, which I doubt, what makes you think you can help with billion-dollar international negotiations?" "Because the letter you're holding isn't a contract negotiation, sir. It's a rejection." The color drained from Blackstone's face. "What did you just say?" Maria took a deep breath, knowing she was crossing a line from which there might be no return. "Way Corporation is rejecting the current partnership proposal They're giving you one final meeting next week, but they want to see genuine cultural understanding and presentations in multiple Asian languages. They feel that global tech has been culturally insensitive in previous communications. Blackstone snatched up the Chinese letter, staring at the characters as if he could will them to make sense. You're telling me this says we're rejected? Not yet, sir, but they're very close to walking away. The letter mentions concerns about global tech's superficial approach to international partnerships and questions whether your company truly respects Asian business culture. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the soft hum of the air conditioning system. Blackstone slowly sank into one of the conference room chairs, the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. "Prove it," he said finally. "Sir, prove you can read this. Translate it, word for word." His eyes narrowed as he studied her face. "And if you're lying to me, if you're somehow trying to scam me or make yourself seem more important than you are, I'll have security escort you out of this building permanently." Maria nodded calmly. She had expected this challenge. Moving to stand beside Blackstone, she began reading the Chinese letter aloud, first in Mandarin, then providing a precise English translation. "Respected Mr. Blackstone, after careful consideration of Global Tech's proposal for partnership in the Asian markets, Wei Corporation must express our concerns regarding the cultural approach your company has demonstrated." As she continued translating, Blackstone's expression moved through several stages: surprise, concentration, and finally, a kind of stunned recognition that the woman he had dismissed as just a janitor was providing him with exactly the information he desperately needed. When she finished, the conference room fell silent again. Blackstone leaned back in his chair, studying Maria with new eyes. "How is this possible?" he asked quietly. "How does someone with your education end up cleaning your offices?" Maria finished. "Life doesn't always go according to plan, Mr. Blackstone. Sometimes survival takes precedence over career advancement." Blackstone stood up abruptly and began pacing the room. "This changes everything. If Wei Corporation is actually rejecting us, if they want cultural sensitivity and multilingual presentations..." He stopped pacing and turned to face her. "Could you handle the translation for next week's meeting? All of it?" Maria considered the question carefully. "It would depend on what languages you need and how complex the presentations are. But yes, I believe I could help." "What would it cost to hire you as a translator for this deal?" "I'm not sure, sir. I've never been hired as a corporate translator before." Blackstone was quiet for a long moment, then suddenly laughed. But this time, the sound wasn't mocking. It was amazed, almost delighted. "You know what?" he said, shaking his head in wonder. "I was wrong about you, completely wrong, and I think I owe you an apology. If this incredible story of hidden talents and second chances is captivating you, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories of people who defy expectations. Ring that notification bell too, because you won't want to miss what happens when Maria gets her chance to shine. The following Monday morning brought a flurry of activity to the 52nd floor that Maria had never witnessed during her early morning cleaning rounds. By 7 a.m., the conference room was buzzing with executives, assistants, and what appeared to be a small army of translators hastily assembled over the weekend. Maria arrived at her usual 4:30 a.m. start time, but instead of her cleaning uniform, she wore a professional navy blue blazer and skirt that she hadn't touched in years. Blackstone had insisted she join the preparation team as a cultural consultant and translator, a role that paid more in 1 week than she typically made in 3 months of cleaning. The transformation wasn't lost on her former colleagues in the cleaning crew. Her supervisor, Mrs. Patterson, had been supportive but bewildered when Maria explained her temporary reassignment. "Honey," she had said, "I always knew you were too smart for this job, but I never imagined you were hiding all this." Now, As Maria reviewed the presentation materials that Global Tech's team had prepared, she couldn't help but wince at some of the cultural missteps that were still embedded in their approach. The graphics used colors that were considered unlucky in Chinese culture. The business card designs ignored important hierarchy protocols, and several key phrases had been translated using online services that missed crucial cultural nuances. "We need to completely redesign these slides," she told Jennifer Walsh, the head of marketing, who was leading the presentation preparation. "Red and gold are much more appropriate colors for a Chinese business audience than the blue and silver you've chosen." Jennifer, a sharp woman in her 30s, who had initially been skeptical of taking direction from someone she'd only known as cleaning staff, was now hanging on Maria's every word. "What else are we missing?" Maria pulled out a notepad where she'd been jotting down observations. "The greeting protocol is wrong, the gift exchange ceremony needs to be restructured, and we need to prepare business cards in Mandarin, Japanese, and Korean, printed on higher quality cardstock with proper hierarchical formatting." "This is incredibly detailed," Jennifer said, looking over Maria's notes. "Where did you learn all this?" 2 years of business school in Tokyo, a year working with international trade delegations in Hong Kong, and my master's thesis on cross-cultural business communication patterns in Asia-Pacific markets," Maria replied matter-of-factly. The preparation intensified over the next 3 days. Maria found herself working 16-hour days, translating presentations, coaching executives on proper cultural etiquette, and helping redesign materials to be culturally appropriate. She worked alongside Global Tech's regular staff as an equal for the first time in 5 years, and the experience was both exhilarating and exhausting. On Wednesday afternoon, Blackstone called her into his private office. The penthouse space was intimidating, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, expensive artwork, and a desk the size of a small dining table. But Maria found that her nervousness had been replaced by a quiet confidence born from knowing her expertise was genuinely valued. "I've been thinking about our conversation on Monday," Blackstone said, gesturing for her to sit in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. "About life not going according to plan." Maria nodded, unsure where he was heading. "I want you to know that regardless of how this meeting goes on Friday, there will be a permanent position for you here at Global Tech. Not cleaning, though there's nothing wrong with that work, but using your actual skills. International business development, translation services, cultural consulting, whatever makes the best use of your talents." The offer was more than Maria had dared hope for, but she found herself hesitating. "Mr. Blackstone, I appreciate the opportunity, but I need to ask you something directly." "Go ahead." "Is this offer because you've discovered I have valuable skills, or is it because you feel guilty about how you initially treated me?" Blackstone leaned back in his chair, considering her question seriously. "Both, probably, but mostly because in 3 days you've identified and solved problems that our regular consulting team missed entirely. That's not guilt talking. That's recognition of exceptional competence." Thursday evening found Maria in her small apartment in Pilsen, a predominantly Latino neighborhood on Chicago's southwest side. Her daughter Sophia, now a sophomore at DePaul University, was helping her prepare for the biggest professional moment of her life in years. "I'm so proud of you, Mom," Sophia said as she helped Maria practice her presentation one final time. "I always wondered why someone as smart as you was working as a janitor, but I never wanted to ask because I thought it might hurt your feelings." Maria smiled at her daughter. "I was working as a janitor because it allowed me to take care of you and your brother when you needed me most. There's no shame in honest work, Mija, but I'm grateful for this chance to use other parts of myself again." Her son Carlos called from Northwestern, where he was finishing his senior year in engineering. "Mom, Jennifer from your work called earlier and said the Way Corporation team specifically requested that you handle the majority of the translation work tomorrow. They were impressed by the cultural sensitivity in the revised presentation materials. As Maria prepared for bed, she reflected on the strange journey that had led her to this moment. 5 years ago, she had been desperate, grieving, and focused solely on survival. Tomorrow, she would be facilitating one of the largest international business deals in global tech's history. Friday morning dawned crisp and clear over Lake Michigan. The Way Corporation delegation arrived at Global Tech's offices at precisely 10 a.m., led by Chairman Wei Tianming, a distinguished man in his 60s, accompanied by 5 other executives and 2 assistants. Maria greeted them in the lobby in fluent Mandarin, following the proper protocols she had coached the Global Tech team to observe. The surprise and pleasure on Chairman Wei's face when he realized she was not only fluent, but culturally knowledgeable, was immediately apparent. "It is refreshing to work with an American company that truly understands the importance of cultural respect," he said to her in Mandarin as they walked toward the conference room. The presentation that followed was unlike anything Global Tech had ever attempted. Maria seamlessly translated between languages as needed, but more importantly, she facilitated genuine cultural exchange. When Chairman Wei made a subtle reference to a Chinese business philosophy, Maria was able to explain the concept to the Global Tech team and help them respond appropriately. When Blackstone attempted to make a point about American innovation, Maria helped him frame it in terms that resonated with Chinese values of long-term relationship building. 2 hours into what was scheduled to be a 4-hour meeting, Chairman Wei called for a brief recess. As the Way Corporation team huddled together, Maria noticed their animated discussion and positive body language. "They're impressed," she whispered to Blackstone. Chairman Wei just told his team that this is the first time an American company has shown genuine respect for Chinese business culture. When the meeting resumed, Chairman Wei addressed the room with a formal announcement. "Way Corporation is pleased to accept Global Tech's partnership proposal. However, we have one condition." The Global Tech team tensed, but Maria caught the slight smile playing at the corners of Chairman Wei's mouth. "We request that Ms. Maria Santos serve as the primary cultural liaison for this partnership. Her understanding of both American business practices and Asian cultural values is exactly what this collaboration requires to succeed." The partnership agreement signed that afternoon was worth $1.2 billion over 5 years, making it the largest international deal in Global Tech's history. But for Maria, the real victory was the moment when Blackstone stood up at the closing ceremony and publicly acknowledged her contribution. "This deal would not have been possible without Maria Santos," he announced to the assembled group. "She exemplifies the kind of hidden talent that exists throughout our organization, talent that we need to do a better job of recognizing and nurturing." As the Way Corporation delegation prepared to leave, Chairman Wei approached Maria privately. "Ms. Santos, Way Corporation would be honored to offer you a position as our North American cultural consultant. Your skills are exactly what international business needs more of." Maria thanked him graciously, but explained that she had already accepted a position with Global Tech. What she didn't mention was her growing vision for something even bigger, a consulting firm that would help companies navigate cultural barriers in international business, staffed by people whose talents had been overlooked by traditional corporate structures. That evening, at the celebration dinner Global Tech hosted for the successful partnership signing, Maria found herself seated at the head table next to Blackstone and the other senior executives. It was a surreal contrast to just 1 week earlier when she had been invisible to these same people. "I have to ask," said Jennifer Walsh, who had become a genuine ally over the week. "What made you finally speak up? You could have just finished cleaning that conference room and walked away." Maria considered the question as she looked around the table, at faces that had learned to see her as a colleague rather than just service staff, at a company that was beginning to understand that talent comes from unexpected places. "I think it was knowing that my silence would hurt people," she said finally. Not just the executives who would lose money, but all the employees who would lose their jobs if this deal fell through. When you have the ability to help, staying quiet becomes a choice to let harm happen. Blackstone raised his glass. To Maria Santos, who reminded us that the most valuable people in an organization aren't always the ones with the biggest titles. As glasses clinked around the table, Maria felt a profound sense of completion, not an ending, but a return to herself after years of necessary hibernation. 6 months later, Maria Santos stood in her new corner office on the 48th floor of Global Tech Industries, looking out over the Chicago skyline she had once viewed only through conference room windows while cleaning. As Vice President of International Cultural Relations, she'd built a department from scratch, hiring multilingual professionals whose talents had been underutilized in other industries. Her first hire had been David Kim, a former taxi driver who spoke fluent Korean, English, and Spanish and had a PhD in economics from Seoul National University. Her second was Fatima Alzara, who had been working as a hotel housekeeper despite holding master's degrees in Arabic literature and international business from universities in Cairo and London. The Way partnership is exceeding all projections, her assistant informed her as she reviewed the quarterly reports. Chairman Way specifically requested that you handle the negotiations for their expansion into South American markets. Maria smiled, remembering her early morning encounter with that crucial Chinese letter that had started everything. The Way Corporation partnership had indeed proven wildly successful, but it had also opened doors to partnerships in 12 other countries. Global Tech's new approach to cultural sensitivity had become a model that other American companies were studying and trying to replicate. Her department now employed 15 people, each with extraordinary linguistic and cultural expertise, most of whom had been working in jobs that didn't utilize their education. They had become Global Tech's secret weapon in international negotiations, and companies around the world were starting to specifically request the Global Tech cultural approach to their business dealings. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Blackstone entered carrying 2 cups of coffee, a ritual they had developed during their intense preparation for the Way Corporation meeting. The board meeting this afternoon, he said, settling into one of her visitor chairs. They're going to formally approve your proposal for the International Talent Recognition Program. The program was Maria's vision for systematically identifying and developing overlooked talent throughout the company. It would provide education funding, mentorship and career development opportunities for employees whose potential had been missed by traditional promotion processes. Richard, she said, using his first name as he had invited her to do months ago, can I ask you something? Always. That morning when you found me in the conference room, what would you have done if I hadn't spoken up about the letter? Blackstone was quiet for a moment, staring out the window. Walked into that meeting completely unprepared, probably destroyed the partnership, and never known that one of the smartest people in the building was emptying my trash can every morning. Do you think there are other people in the organization whose talents we're not seeing? I'm certain of it. That's why your program is so important. He paused, then smiled. You know, I've been thinking about something else. Remember that first morning when you told me you spoke 7 languages and I laughed at you? I remember. I said something incredibly stupid. I said if you could translate that Chinese letter, I'd give you my salary. His smile widened. Well, you did translate it. And in a way, that translation saved the company and made us all a lot more money than we would have made otherwise. Maria laughed. Are you offering to give me your salary? No, but I am offering you something else. The board is creating a new position, Chief Cultural Officer, reporting directly to the CEO. It would make you the highest-ranking Latina executive in the company's history, and you'd be responsible for cultural strategy across all our international operations. The offer was staggering, but Maria found herself thinking not just about her own advancement, but about the ripple effects it could create. What about my current department? It would expand. You'd oversee cultural relations for all divisions, and you'd have the budget to implement your talent recognition program company-wide. As Blackstone left her office, Maria turned back to the window overlooking the city. Somewhere out there were taxi drivers with economics PhDs, hotel housekeepers with literature degrees, security guards with engineering backgrounds, and countless others whose circumstances had led them to work that didn't reflect their capabilities. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Saw the article in the Tribune about your promotion. So proud of you, Mom. You're changing the world." Her son, Carlos, had sent a similar message earlier, along with a photo of him showing the newspaper article to his engineering professors. That evening, Maria returned to her neighborhood in Pilsen, where she still lived, despite being able to afford something much more expensive. The community had supported her during the hardest years of her life, and she wasn't ready to leave behind the neighbors who had become family. At the corner market where she bought groceries, Mr. Gutierrez greeted her with a huge smile. "Maria, I saw you on the news. The whole neighborhood is talking about you." "It's been quite a journey, Mr. Gutierrez." "You know what I think," the elderly shopkeeper said as he bagged her groceries. "I think you were always the same person, smart, hard-working, caring about others. You just got a chance to show it in a bigger way." As Maria walked home through the familiar streets of her neighborhood, she reflected on the truth of his words. She hadn't become a different person. She had simply been given the opportunity to use all parts of herself again. The woman who had once been mocked for claiming to speak 7 languages now found herself fielding calls from universities wanting her to guest lecture, from companies seeking her expertise, and from media outlets fascinated by her story. But the calls that mattered most to her were the ones from people like David and Fatima and the dozens of others whose hidden talents were finally being recognized. Later that evening, as she prepared materials for the next day's board presentation, Maria's mind drifted back to that early morning encounter in the conference room. She had been invisible then, just another member of the cleaning crew moving through the corporate world without being truly seen. Now, she understood that the invisibility hadn't been real. She had always possessed the same knowledge, the same capabilities, the same potential to contribute. What had changed wasn't her. It was the willingness of others to see beyond assumptions about what a person in a cleaning uniform could offer. The Chinese letter that started everything was now framed on her office wall, along with its English translation. But more meaningful to her was the photo next to it, a group picture of her department, 15 extraordinary people who had found their way from overlooked positions to roles where their talents could flourish. As she reviewed her notes for tomorrow's presentation of the International Talent Recognition Program, Maria smiled at the memory of Blackstone's incredulous laughter when she had claimed to speak 7 languages. The woman he had dismissed as just a janitor was now about to become the chief cultural officer of a Fortune 500 company, overseeing international operations worth billions of dollars. But the real victory wasn't the title, or the salary, or the recognition. It was the knowledge that her story had opened doors for others, that companies were starting to look more carefully at the hidden talents within their own organizations, and that assumptions about who could contribute what were finally being questioned. The janitor who spoke 7 languages had become the executive who created opportunities for others to be seen, valued, and empowered to use their gifts. And in a world that often overlooked the extraordinary within the ordinary, that transformation was perhaps the most powerful translation of all. What an incredible journey from invisible to indispensable. If this story of hidden talents and deserved recognition inspired you, please share the love by hitting that like button and subscribing to our channel for more amazing stories of people who prove that you should never judge someone by their job title. Don't forget to ring that notification bell, because everyone deserves to hear stories that remind us that brilliance can be found anywhere and respect should be given to everyone. Your worth isn't determined by your position, but by the unique gifts you bring to the world. Until next time, keep recognizing the extraordinary in the ordinary.